Welcome back in Cover One Draft Weekly. Jon Helmkamp with my friend, as always, Daniel Harms, rocking a very nice T-shirt, if I do say so myself.
Oh yeah, it's nice. I like the yellow one better than the blue one that I got. It looks cleaner. It's the Jordan brand that just kind of works better with the yellow. And I mean, it's been a nice couple of weeks, almost a month here for the resident Chiefs fan / Michigan fan / West Detroit fan person. you know, I can't. It's nice being spoiled every now and then, and we'll just cut off there so that the Bills fans that end up listening to this don't hate me forever.
Yeah, me being one of them. But yes, it's been a hell of a month for you. If you're not watching this on YouTube, he's sporting a yellow University of Michigan 2023 National Champs T-shirt, rocking the gear. We're all jealous. Not everyone can be as fortuitous as being a combination of Michigan and Kansas City fans
it's
over the last month. It's been a heck of a month, but we are here for a really exciting episode. We're excited to get back into it. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, look at the new graphics. They're just beautiful.
They're
I love
so
this
nice.
new theme. We got a little facelift. My face got a little facelift, sporting some frames. We're just leveling up all over the place. But we've got a good show for you today. We are going to have some fun. We are talking 2024 rookie wide receivers, which is a hot topic of conversation for very good reason in this year's draft class. We decided to have a little bit of fun. It was Harm's suggestion here at the end of last week. He goes, hey, why don't we do our top 5 wide receivers with a couple honorable mentions there, and we're not going to exchange notes throughout the week. And I was like, hey, you know what? I love it. Let's do it. We've watched a lot of film on these guys. We've got a pretty good handle, I feel like, on a lot of the names at the wide receiver position, especially towards the top of the list. You know, we can always dive deeper. There's like probably 200 guys that are draft eligible we could probably spend time on. But we're working our way through it. But at the top of the list, I feel really confident about where we're at. We have not exchanged any notes here, so it's going to be really interesting to see what we line up with, where we might be different. We're going to kick it off. Daniel's going to lead the way here with your 2024 pre-combine wide receiver 1.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just kind of explode some brains everywhere with Marvin Harrison Jr., the one big old number 1 wide receiver 1. If you guys didn't already know, I know there's a lot of dissension among those that have been watching wide receivers for a long time. Like they don't want to put Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. They're trying to find little things to nitpick. Oh, he doesn't create enough separation. He's not always catching the ball in those tight windows. And just to let you guys know that windows are created by the throw as much as they are by the wide receiver. That is a factual thing. And I understand that CJ Stroud did that as well last year, and Marvin Harrison Jr. was catching tight window throws. Well, there are some players that are just naturally good at that, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of those players. But the comp that I have for him is Davante Adams. This guy moves. It's like I'm watching Davante Adams when I watch Marvin Harrison Jr. He moves so quickly, so smoothly, just in those short to intermediate parts, and he is going to find out very quickly how to get open deep down the field, because that was also where Davante Adams grew with the right quarterback. Landing spot will determine this a little bit, but he's just this guy that always seems to know either how to get open, flashing late hands if there is close separate or there is close coverage there, or just that last second separation, the little to put your foot in the dirt and then get that extra inch of separation, the physical nature, the subtleties. I know Jon currently is motioning the push off. Yes.
little forearm shimmy.
Got to be artistic. You have to be able to create separation on your own. That last second separation, as long as you're not extending all the way. I mean, look at T. Higgins. Look at Jamar Chase. These guys have figured out the art to doing that. And I got no problems doing it. As long as you don't extend, you're good. So it's really hard to poke holes in his game. He's not the fastest guy in the world. Oh, no. He's probably going to run somewhere around 4.5, maybe high 4.4s if he's been training, which he's been doing, I would imagine. So, but it's not there on tape. Like, he's not the go get it guy that we'll say some of the other speedsters in this class are, because we won't just give away some of our things. But I mean, I'm tired of seeing all the nonsense where people are just exhausted with the Marvin Harrison Jr. discourse. So it's pretty simple, easy for me. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number one wide receiver in this class. He's going to enter the NFL as one of the most refined receivers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's probably going to be some places in this list where we differ. This is not one of them. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. at my number one wide receiver in 2024, and he should be just straight up for everybody. He is polished. He is nuanced. Listed at 6'4", 205. He's got kind of that wiry, strong build with a big wingspan, great body control on the boundary, great after the catch. He plays physical. His route running is just it's beautiful. The Devontae Adams, I mean, you're comparing him to one of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in the NFL over the last 20 years. And I understand it. Coming out of college, he's one of the best route runners that we've seen. You can put him up there with some of the top route runners that have come out, like an Amari Cooper when Amari Cooper was coming out of Alabama. It's up there in the level of polish and professionalism that he displays as a route runner. Combine that with the 6'4" and the massive wingspan and the big hands and the body control. God, I don't know how anyone has anyone other than him at one. Sure, you might want to go with someone that's maybe just a touch more explosive, but in terms of just being a pure football player and a really damn good one, it's Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is basically a lock to be a top 5 draft pick in 2024. I think the odds on right now is that he's the 4th overall pick, the first non-quarterback to go is what it looks like. And that might be Arizona. So maybe you've got a Kyler Murray combo here with Marvin Harrison Jr.
I would love that.
Oh, it'd be spicy, man, because we saw what Kyler can do, bombing it downfield and just throwing it up there to when he had DeAndre Hopkins. Well, guess what? You've got another sideline savant here in Marvin Harrison Jr., and they could have a lot of fun real early.
Yeah, one of the things that I was talking to the people down at Senior Bowl, and I have got a little ear full of what Quinyon Mitchell thought about Marvin Harrison Jr. when they matched up, and he's like, he's so physical. Yeah. It's to the point where he's not just a physical runner. He is physical at every point of contact, whether it's blocking, high effort blocker, and a good technical blocker as well. He can do all of those things, but he was talking about how through the route, it was so hard to stay with him because he's just physically imposing for a guy who's, like you said, wiry. So all of that on top of the short area usage, the footwork, the manipulation tactics that he has in his hands through contact, high pointing, the late flash is so important, especially nowadays. If you're not going to be the most, like, if you're not going to create the most separation, but you still stack those corners, late flashing hands is 100%. You're making those throws like a 75-25% for you. So getting that little bit of inside, information on Marvin Harrison Jr. from Quinyon Mitchell was a lot of fun because he's going to be one of the top corners drafted in this class, and he got to see one one-on-one. So that was just a nice little nugget of information I thought I'd share with you guys.
I heard something similar, that Quinyon basically tried to body him up early and then went, oh, no, that's not going to work. So he stopped doing it. Yeah, he just stopped. He's like, nope, not getting physical with him on the line because I'm going to get toasted every time.
Yeah.
So Marvin Harrison Jr., elite wide receiver prospect. I know prospect fatigue can kind of set in. The next couple months are going to try people a little bit. Maybe you start getting a little too cute. Don't get too cute on this one. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the truth. We're going to move on to my wide receiver 2. We're going to kind of go in a zigzag here as if we're doing a snake draft between the two of us. My wide receiver 2 in this draft class is Malik Nabers out of LSU. He's who I've got at number 2. I think it's close to being a 2-dog race there for that number 2 spot. But Malik Nabers, what he possesses is just electricity in a bottle. He is so explosive. He is so sudden. He is lethal after the catch. I saw someone try to say that he wasn't, and I almost choked. He is electricity personified at the wide receiver position. So you're going to have some of the prospect fatigue that sets in with Marvin Harrison Jr. And some people I think are going to want to put Malik Nabers up there, the number 1 spot, just because of how much juice he has. And he is sudden, he is crisp in all phases of the route and after the catch. So he is a very dynamic wide receiver. And I think in pretty much any other draft class, he would be the surefire wide receiver one, except you're dealing with a true generational wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. I know generational talent gets thrown around a lot. Marvin Harrison Jr. is actually that, so it's not something that I say lightly, but Malik Nabers, pure explosiveness in what he's able to do. He reminds me so much of Odell Beckham Jr. when Odell Beckham Jr. was coming out of LSU and what he did early in his NFL career. I think that he's going to provide an instant spark in the short to intermediate game, as well as being a deep threat for whatever team decides to draft him.
Yeah, this guy is, every time you turn on LSU tape, whether it's to watch, Brian Thomas or Jaden Daniels, you just find your eyes gravitating towards Malik Nabers. And for a guy that is got size, he's got speed, athletic ability, it looks so damn easy. He turns the jets on, and there are quite a few electric speed acceleration players in this draft, and they all possess that 0 to 60. He can do it like he's like a gazelle, like those long strides. He gets up so quickly and more sudden than you expect for his size. So all of what you said is true. I have some of my questions about him just come down to the technical hand usage that he possesses, whether it's concentration drops or getting off of press. How is he going to deal with that? And yes, you're not going to deal with a ton of press in the NFL. It's more about hand usage through the route because you want to consistently hand fight. You're going to have to consistently hand fight, whether it's against zone or man coverage. It doesn't have to be press. You have to kind of know where this DB is trying to make you go and make him move the other way and keep getting your hands off. So that's one of the things that I was, just kind of pointing out to him, or just not to him because I've, talked to Malik Nabers, obviously.
Hey, Malik, here's what I'm thinking.
Well, a couple of things about your game that I want to see you improve upon. But the concentration drops.
Damian Parsons?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to our boy Damian over there at the TDN doing fantastic work.
Yep.
But I'd love to see, and honestly, LSU does a really good job of just getting him into space. And he's going to be lethal in space. Understanding the game is where his next level is. I think that's part of the problem with people projecting him over Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, well, he's already this good. He can still get better. Yes, that's very true. He can get better. And being more well-rounded, finding those soft spots in zone, all of those things he can absolutely get better at, and he's going to get better at. And it all comes down to where he lands, because if I'm being honest with you, not a lot of teams focus on improving these wide receivers like we saw Rashee Rice improve this year in Kansas City. That was not something you see a lot of, but the Chiefs kind of used him differently than he had ever been used before. It wasn't really how he had been used at SMU. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. He's going to be making crazy catches, spectacular speed, making guys miss in open space, all that stuff. He's going to be one of the most electric players in the NFL next year. So watch as he grows, watch for some of his release packages that he's going to need to develop, those hand usage things. Once you start seeing those, we're talking about a guy who could be maybe a top 10, top 5 receiver in the NFL.
No doubt. The athleticism is there. The explosiveness is there. What he can give to an offense. He's just a guy you want to get the ball to. Like I said, it's like Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ coming out as a freshman, or as a freshman, it's not college, as a rookie, and in his second season, he made so much money on slant routes and just his ability to hit those slants, catch it in stride, and just stay at speed and accelerate to full speed within 1 or 2 steps. That's what Malik Nabers can do. It's ironic they're both out of LSU. It's also ironic there's a really good chance that both of them start their careers playing for the Giants. I don't really see much of an avenue where Nabers gets past the Giants at 6. Unless they want to go another route, another wide receiver. But I think you need playmakers in that offense, especially if you are riding with Daniel Jones. If they decide that they're not going to take a quarterback up there towards the top, you need playmakers that can create. And I think that Malik Nabers is that guy that you just get the ball to in quick, easy to dissect, 3-step drops, get the ball out, put it on Nabers and let him go to work. I think he would fit their offense incredibly well.
I'm with you, man. So I have Malik Nabers at 3. because I'm not going to do the whole discussion after that. My number 2 wide receiver is Rome Odunze, and a lot of it is the fact that he took his junior year, or his sophomore year, excuse me. I believe he's a junior coming out this year, and he said, "I need to get better physically." Puts on 15 pounds of muscle, and then just starts dunking on dudes. He starts working his hands through contact. The guy doesn't drop footballs. He has some of the best hands in this entire class. I would put his hands up there with Marvin Harrison Jr. I believe those guys are separate from everybody else in this draft class. That's how good I think he is. And as a sophomore, he was already a nuanced route runner, but he didn't have that physical ability to kind of muscle off some of these corners and get them out of his hip pocket, or just, again, go up and dunk on them. So we saw an evolution of his game from sophomore to junior year. And in this past year, I mean, Michael Penix and this Washington offense was bombs away. And it didn't matter if he created separation. He's not the fastest guy in the world either. His acceleration and speed is good. It's not great, but he doesn't necessarily need all of that. He's very good at, again, flashing those hands late. And he's a good route runner. He's a very good route runner. He might be a top, 2-3 route runner in this class. I think that he's so polished in terms of the top of the route movement, with the head fakes, the shoulder shimmies, and creating his own space throughout the route. He can make DBs go where he wants them to. So that ability to track the football downfield, we saw it multiple times this year, where the ball's hanging up forever because Michael Penix doesn't exactly have, when he's throwing a deep ball, he's throwing that thing to the moon. It is a moon ball, and then it's going to come all the way down. You have to be tracking for a long time to be able to find that. And he still flashes the late hands. He can keep his body like 100% parallel to the sliver of the end zone or the sliver of the sideline and still get 2 feet in bounds. And all of that, I feel like, as prospects, we're talking about, I have him as an 88 grade and I have Nabers as an 87. This is on my sheet. They are so close. It's so close. It's really more of a, how do you feel this guy is going to maybe early on in his career perform against DBs and NFL physicality? And I think right now Rome's got a heads up on Nabers, but they're going to be used differently. One's going to be used in space. One's going to be used downfield and used in these short to intermediate windows. Like you said, the slants, I could see him just being a slant machine in the NFL and a zone beater too. So there's so much to like about him. And his, the one of the other negatives that I have is his catch to attack. And what that is for me is the ability to catch the football and then immediately find that space. And that's what Rome kind of struggles sometimes to do. He's not the best yards after catch guy. And that's another reason that people have Nabers above him, which I'm not going to argue at all. I understand it completely. So he's my wide receiver 2 in this draft, whole pick your style, choose your adventure kind of wide receiver in this realm. So that's that's what I got, man.
So much of this class is that way. There's so many different prototypes,
yes,
and a lot of it does come down to preference. I'm right there with you that grading these guys out is just slivers. I mean, just hairs. Everything you said, I agree with. I think Rome Odunze is more nuanced. I think Rome Odunze has better hands. I think that he has a better understanding of how to read coverages and sit down and manipulate defenders and stuff like that than Malik Nabers does. Malik Nabers possesses more athleticism. He's going to give you more after the catch. And a lot of this is just going to come down to which style of wide receiver does an NFL team want to build around. And that's what this is going to come down to. Whoever's drafting there, you're looking at like 2 guys that are both terrific wide receivers. This is Odunze's senior season. He went back after his junior.
Okay.
Yeah.
My apologies.
No, it's good. But his junior year, I thought that he was going to come out last year and he would have been around like my wide receiver 4 in his class. In this year, in a better wide receiver class, he went back, like you said, got bigger, got more physical, dunked on dudes, started just bullying people at the catch point. And it's brilliant. You don't have to come out as a junior. You can continue to develop and grow both physically and mentally in college. Emeka Egbuka going back to Ohio State this year, a name that we're going to hear early next year. And going back to an Ohio State room that now doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that I could see taking a Rome Odunze leap.
Yeah, for
next
sure.
year, just prefacing out to 2025. But you can continue to develop in college, guys. You don't have to be an early declare. And now we're talking about Odunze being a top 10 draft pick, more than likely. And I cannot wait to see where he goes. But I agree with everything you said about the prospect and the type of player that he is. And it's going to come down to, just like I said, what these NFL teams are wanting to do. We floated around the idea of the Chargers potentially looking at taking a playmaker there at the 6th overall pick. We floated the idea of them trading down with the Jets for the Jets to come up and get their preferred offensive lineman. But if you're telling me that you're going to stick and pick to try to surround Justin Herbert, I know they need offensive line help, but if one of those 2 wide receivers is sitting there, especially for Jim Harbaugh, I don't know. It's interesting at least to say, hey, we're going to give him a young stud playmaker. I know going first round wide receiver back-to-back years is not a good look. I don't know if this front office and coaching staff is going to believe in Quentin Johnston the way that last year's group did. So we'll see what happens there. But it's a very interesting conversation. Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Nabers in some combination. I feel like there's a pretty good chance that those are your first 3 wide receivers off the board.
Yeah, I think that we kind of assumed that Marvin Harrison Jr. is an interior of his own. I have him 4 or 5 points higher on my grading scale that I have Nabers and Odunze, and then those 2 are like segmented together. That's how it is for me, and then it's everybody else. So I don't know about you, but I feel like that should be. And again, I'm not going to argue with people too much if you like Malik Nabers more than Marvin Harrison Jr. I understand. I do. I get the want to have that electricity, that yards after the catch guy, because especially in today's NFL with the 2 high safeties, you want to be able to take advantage of all that space that's created underneath with it. So I'm not going to push back a ton. My opinion is just that that's how it should be structured based off of what, we've seen.
Yeah. So we're on to my 4th wide receiver, right? That's where we're at now?
Yes, I believe so.
Now it gets interesting, folks. I think without exchanging notes, we pretty much knew that those were going to be the first 3 off the board.
For sure.
Now there's probably going to be some dissension in the ranks, and I'm very excited to get into these conversations. I'm going to start with my number 4 wide receiver. My number 4 wide receiver in the 2024 NFL draft class pre-combine is Troy Franklin, University of Oregon, which I bet you expected me to say.
I did. I very much did, but let's hear what you got.
So Troy Franklin is a very, very intriguing wide receiver prospect. Some of this is projection a little bit because his route tree was not super expansive in terms of what they asked him to do. Now, what I am projecting is I'm projecting elite athleticism for Troy Franklin, who is tall and slender and has blazing speed. Mm-hmm. I hope he runs the 40 at the combine because he's going to put down a really, really low number. But this is a guy that can burn defenders with subtle nuance. I think he has great releases off the line of scrimmage. I think that he has a great ability to stack defenders and create separation. Listen, we watched Bo Nix down there in Mobile. He was struggling to put the ball on a dime. Troy Franklin made him look like a Heisman candidate. Troy Franklin can stack defenders. I think he can separate late. I think he's got great late hands. I think that he has an ability to develop into being one of the more explosive and polished wide receivers in the NFL, because what I see from him in his quick change of direction and his ability to get in and out of breaks when they ask him to do it, I think is very, very good. So this is going to come down to a little bit how he's used in the NFL. Are they just drafting him to be a deep threat, kind of decoy, take the top off the defense and try to get some big throws down the field to him on deep routes? Or is this a team that looks at his skill set and his ability and his athleticism and says, I think that we can clean up maybe a little bit of the technical side and turn him into a guy with a really, really complete route tree that's going to cook defenders? Because he's a gazelle in the open field. The way that he runs when he opens it up is so smooth, and he just can burn by guys. Defenders give him so much respect that his tempoing leaves defenders guessing. They don't know what he's going to do in terms of if he's going deep, if he's going to snap it off and break back on a curl. I think this is a guy that can just be a lethal playmaker at the next level, man. I just have the highest regard for his ability and his athleticism. Did have some issue with drops a little bit. not the surest hands in the draft class. I will say that he's not perfect, which is why he's wide receiver 4, not wide receiver 2. But I think that he offers so much to an NFL team. And I think that if you go, like, listen, my dream scenario, I'm a lifelong Bills fan since October, is what I've been telling everybody. My dream scenario is that he goes to the Bills, who I expect them to part ways with Gabe Davis on, and have that deep threat opening in their offense. You put Josh Allen's arm with Troy Franklin's speed, and then teach this guy how to kind of snap off some of that speed into short to intermediate routes. Boy, that's gonna be a real problem. So Troy Franklin, I'm a believer. His production profile is fantastic. There's a lot of things to like about him as a prospect. He's my wide receiver 4 in this draft class.
Yeah, no, I understand. Don't get me wrong. We all love like the idea of Troy Franklin. Like, right, he's just so explosive, and that linear speed, that straight line speed, is among the best in this class. I think that he's so much fun to watch. I also think that Oregon helped him a lot. I think that the offense at Oregon, which is not a bad thing, mind you, it's not a bad thing. It's not a knock on him. It's driven to take advantage of one read Bo Nix. You throw here, you throw here. And Troy Franklin, by the way, you're just going to be open. So just take the ball and run with it. And there were some times where you saw Bo Nix's ball placement hinder the catchability. Because while I agree with you, I think Troy Franklin's hands, and more specifically his ball tracking or spotty, he wasn't helped out a ton by Bo Nix's ball placement. You see him have to adjust a lot, and that's not really his strength. It's not body adjustment. It's more, give me the ball in stride, and I'm going to cook everybody in front of me. Like, that's what he wants to do. So I kind of see him in that Jordan Addison type mold where he's going to be fantastic early on.
Which makes sense because I love Jordan Addison too. So that checks out.
That all makes sense. Troy Franklin is not in my top 5. So he was one of my honorable mentions for this. And it comes down to a couple of the reasons that I wasn't as high on Jordan Addison coming out last year as it turns out. But they did a good job. He landed in Minnesota, which was a beautiful, just beautiful landing spot because Kevin O'Connell is one of the best at scheming everybody up. And then, you have Justin Jefferson early on, and later in the season, he unfortunately got hurt, and you saw some of that production kind of come down. And that's a little bit of my worry. If a team drafts him to be the number 1 receiver on their team, I think we run into a little bit of a problem because he's not the most physical guy. I think he can get bumped off his route spacing, which is very crucial, throws off timing, and it throws off specifically where you're going to be with your other receivers, because you always have those 2 or 3 wide receiver sets on each side, and you want to be you want to have a quarterback that will throw the ball into an area. If you got that spacing wrong, he's going to look somewhere else. So obviously, fantastic reading of DBs. Like, he reads the body language extremely well. He can attack the feet of those corners and make him turn where he wants to. So all of that with space, he's really, really good. And I think that he's going to be a very good number 2 wide receiver on a team. I have my own questions, like I said, about his ability in the physicality department and being bumped off routes. Some of the catch point stuff too. I know that there's one clip going around of him dunking on someone. I think that's the only one in his entire portfolio.
Fine.
But
personal mission. I'm going to go clip every physical catch that I can find with Troy Franklin, and I'm going to make a video of it and tag you. That is happening.
That's fine. I'll eat the crow on that if it's true. But regardless, he's a very, very, very fun player, and I'm excited to see where he goes because if you pair him with one of those more physical, bigger receivers, like it's going to make such a beautiful 1-2 punch at any wide receiver room. So electric player, man. That's the bottom line on my summary. It's just so electric.
I'll say the same thing. He profiles way better as a high-end number 2. I completely agree with that. Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith, those kind of wide receivers that I think really can benefit being across from physical,
for sure,
quote unquote alpha wide receiver.
Yeah.
But I think that Franklin has the ability in him to develop over time. So if he's drafted to one of these places that has that number 1, where he can be the number 2 to start his career, but then kind of grow year 3, year 4 into a predominant role in an offense, I think that's kind of the ceiling for me with Troy Franklin, which is a really great wide receiver to draft. That's a really good player to have for your team, is an explosive, tall 4-3 wide receiver running as your number 2. You can do a lot worse than that. So, but listen, once we get out of that top 3 in this draft class, it gets very interesting because there's a wide receiver that I've got a feeling you're going to say next, who was coming up graded right there with Troy Franklin for me. So to you, sir, with your number 4 wide receiver in this draft class.
Also, just really quickly, it wouldn't surprise me if Troy Franklin led rookie receivers in yards. It wouldn't surprise me. Again, depending on his landing spot, that wouldn't shock me just based. Huh?
Can I bet that? Is that going to be a market that I can bet rookie receiving leaders?
As soon as they're drafted. As soon as they're drafted, you should be able to. Yeah. It should be up on, $20
on it at like, because guess what? You're going to have, let's get some sponsors in here for that. But I bet those odds are going to be like plus 700, plus 800, something like that for him to lead rookie receiving yards. Oh, yeah. I'll take it. I'll take that money.
I think they would. It'd be a lot of fun to see where he goes. But I think that I'm going to surprise you here with my number 4 wide receiver because I don't think it's what you think it is, even though it's close. It's really close. But this guy got tons of hype early on in the season, and his quarterback got hurt. And then everyone's like, nah, this guy's not very good. And I'm still on the Keon Coleman bandwagon. I think he's an underrated footwork player. And when I watch his tape, he still has some zone recognition skills that he needs to hone. But Michigan State and Florida State did him zero favors in that regard. They're not good offenses. They're driven by poor quarterbacks. Yes, I said it. Jordan Travis isn't a very good quarterback, everybody. But he bailed them out. He bailed them out of a lot of bad situations because he's another one of those big physical receivers that can dunk on people. The most underrated part of his game is the footwork. He's a born gifted punt returner. He can make people miss in space. He can run good routes.
Can we talk about his listed size really quick? 6'4", 215. 6'4", 215 listed. We'll see what he checks in at. But on film, he looks every bit of 6'4", 215.
He looks a bit bigger than 215 too. Like
he's probably closer to
220. Yeah. This is a physically imposing guy with good footwork. Like, he's not got bad footwork. He gets billed as this vertical player that can't separate. And yes, some of that is true. Like, he's still learning some of the nuances of breaking off routes at the proper depth.
Yep.
But his footwork is good. It is really good for a guy his size, much like his teammate, Johnny Wilson. These guys are big players, and they have exceptional footwork. They shouldn't be able to drop their hips like they do and get in and out of breaks. And again, I'm going to harp on this a lot, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I do believe that their offenses held them back. The route tree stuff is not his fault. He ran like the exact same route tree at Michigan State that he did at Florida State. Go down the field. Go win. Like, that's basically what it was. It's like backyard football. And they're just like, Jordan Travis, go ahead and throw it deep to him. And yeah, I'll bail you out every now and then. I'll dunk on this guy. And he's got good hands. He drops the ball every now and then.
Can I tell you what it reminds me of in terms of who they were in college? DK Metcalf.
Go for it.
In terms of what they were asked to do, they were basically asked to play outside, run deep, be big, be physical, be explosive, go up in high point, be a contested catch guy. Like, and guess what? Hey, DK's turned out pretty okay at the NFL level. Yeah, but Keon Coleman, in terms of, I agree with you, what they asked him to do didn't do him any favors. He didn't get to showcase any ability that he has outside of that. Well, DK Metcalf expanded his route tree quite a bit once he got to the NFL level because of his athleticism, his footwork, and his ability to take coaching. Keon Coleman, I think, can do a lot of that same stuff. I will say that the reason he's not high up in my rankings right now is for some of those concerns with his route running.
Yeah, for sure.
But I do see it in there. Like, I definitely like Keon Coleman. This is just a really deep wide receiver class. That physical, imposing bully ball, that ball is mine at the catch point mentality. That is, it's fun. It is really, really fun to watch. And it's going to be really fun to watch at the next level too.
It is, and I'm excited to see where he goes because right now I do believe that specifically on the consensus boards, they don't portray necessarily how GMs and teams feel about these players, but he's been falling for quite a while. And honestly, when you watch the offense with Jordan Travis and without Jordan Travis, it was a completely different offense. Like they were asking him to basically just be a screen wide receiver. And everyone's like, well, we're not really worried about that quarterback throwing the ball down the field. So we're just going to break every single time you run a screen. And it was 5, 6, 7 times a game. It was maddening. I can't imagine how he felt during doing most of that. So don't be surprised if he runs really good, like 3-cone at the combine. He's got footwork. And again,
God. Talking about DK Metcalf.
What?
You bring up the 3-cone?
I had to throw the 3-cone in there. It's why only reason I did is because you brought up DK Metcalf, who couldn't run a 3-cone, but he still managed to make it in the NFL. So big shock there. Don't undervalue special teams contributions.
Yes,
that is something that he'll come in and will be able to contribute right away. Whatever it is, whether it's gunner, he's not going to be a gunner because let's be honest, you need that straight line speed, but he can play on phases of special teams, especially as a punt returner. Now, he can do that right now. He's very good at it. So Keon Coleman is my wide receiver 4, and I'm still believing in what he put on tape this season and at Michigan State, to be honest with you.
I'm more of a believer than most when it comes to Keon Coleman. I do have a little bit of skepticism there about the route running ability. I think.
Oh, for sure.
I think that there are reasons to be concerned. I think the people that are just incredibly analytics driven, they hate Keon Coleman.
Oh, for sure. Yes,
that's a lot having to do with quarterback play and scheme and all that stuff that you alluded to. You have to look a little bit beyond the numbers.
Absolutely.
So there is a little bit of pause there because listen, not every wide receiver makes it every year, right? There's always a couple that end up turning out. So I think that he's one that I would kind of put my chips on a little bit to be one that maybe doesn't excel. But I think there's an avenue where he does and that he excels in a really, really big way, especially because of that athleticism, that contested catch ability. He's just a bully when the ball's in the air, man. I mean, he can just go up and get it and out muscle any defender. And that's a really fun thing to see in a wide receiver. So we're going to go to your number 5 wide receiver in the 2024 NFL draft class. Is it mine? Is it mine now?
Yours.
Oh, cool.
That was my 4. He was my 4.
Cool. So my number 5 wide receiver, we got to agree here then. Because I thought you were going to say him at number 4.
Nope.
It's Xavier Worthy.
Yes, sir.
Out of University of Texas. Talk about prospect fatigue, like we mentioned early on with Marvin Harrison Jr. Xavier Worthy has been a hot name since he was a true freshman because he was an early true freshman breakout player. And I think that everyone's just like, oh, well, look at all these other shiny new toys for me to play with.
Exactly.
And just completely ignoring the fact that Xavier Worthy has just been a baller for 3 straight years and put up great numbers and been hyper productive and plays bigger than his size and is lethally fast and runs lethal routes and has really, really great hands. I told you that I had Troy Franklin as my wide receiver number 4. Xavier Worthy in my grading system actually graded out slightly higher than Franklin. I just like Franklin's skill set maybe a little bit better, but this is one that I might flip-flop on throughout this pre-draft process because Xavier Worthy is just fun. And his ability, we've talked about it a lot with some of these other wide receivers, especially like when we were down at Senior Bowl and we were watching like Ladd McConkey and some of these other guys that have that deceleration ability to just like shoo, hit the brakes in the defender. Like they pull the Maverick. I'm gonna hit the brakes and he's gonna fly right by. Like Xavier Worthy can do that, man. He can just go from a full like 4-2 sprint to 3 steps, breaking it down and snapping to the sideline, and the defender is 15 yards down the field. And he's just wide open. There's clips of watching Xavier Worthy. He's one of the few wide receivers in this draft class where he does stuff, and I just go, oh my God. Like, it's just like, whoa. Like, that was fun. I think I suffered a little bit of prospect fatigue with Worthy a little bit. Just a little. Because I was starting to get into the shiny new toys. And then I remembered, I was like, you know what? I loved him when he was a freshman. I'm going to go back. I gotta revisit. I got to make sure that I'm not doing him any disservice. And I'm glad that I did because this is a guy I'm putting my flag on it. He is today's NFL's style of wide receiver, with his ability to break and catch and run after the catch, and he plays bigger than he is. He runs physically. He tries to muscle through for extra yards all the time. Whether it's getting him the ball on a screen pass or watching him just dust a single high safety on a deep route, he's a very, very talented wide receiver.
It's funny because it feels like his ball tracking has kind of been forgotten about. Like he can't go downfield and track a football. I have a clip on Twitter at InHarmsWay19 of him tracking a football that hangs in the air for like 5 seconds.
Is this the one against Alabama?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
And he's just waiting for this ball to come down. There's a guy right behind him. Doesn't matter. The ability to, again, flash those late hands for a guy his size. And he has bulked up a little bit since his freshman season. He looks stockier, which is really good. It's helped him survive contact better. There are numerous clips out there, guys. Please do yourselves a favor. I understand he's got a small frame. He survives contact. I have seen guys go to light him up, and he's starting to like understand how to either get his body a little bit out of the way and use those shoulder pads and just kind of dip into the contact a little bit and then right out of it. It's so fun. And like you said earlier, I think I might end up flopping him and Keon Coleman. I am so close.
I know,
because their grades
really
are
close.
very, very similar. But
I'm
like you
really
said,
close to having it.
He's this style of NFL wide receiver. Yeah. Keon Coleman types are typically dying. I have him closer to like a Drake London type player. Like that's how I see him being successful in the NFL. But Xavier Worthy is that smaller Devontae Smith type player.
I was gonna say it.
And yes, he's more lethal after the catch than Devontae Smith is. Devontae Smith is an underrated yak player. He just is because he sees the field so well. Xavier Worthy sees the field really well too. The difference is his 0 to 60 might be the best in this class. He might get up to speed better than any wide receiver, and that is saying something with guys like Malik Nabers and Troy Franklin. It is impressive when you see him in open space, and then the DB is just like, oh shit, that guy just ran by me. Like I'm not even flat-footed. I'm trying to keep up with him, and it doesn't matter. So here we are talking about this guy. His frame is a little bit of a concern. Don't get me wrong. He can be pushed off his route. That does happen with some guys with smaller frame. And the catch point stuff is kind of the same with Troy Franklin. I think he's better at it than Troy is. But what I like about it is he's always attacking the ball with his hands. He doesn't necessarily, when the ball's coming to him and he's facing it, he doesn't let it travel to his body a lot, which is what you need. Those hands, we're going to see the hand measurements when they come in. I think he's got bigger hands than his body would suggest. So that's always a good thing to have. He's just, like you said, the word to describe him is fun. This dude is silky smooth. And like the one of the notes I have is the speed dilation. Like he messes with speed all the time, whether it's his release, his stem, top of route movement. He's so nuanced, and people seem to have just thrown him aside. I don't get it.
I'm telling you, man, it's the fatigue factor. It's the fact that he's been around for 3 years now, where we've been watching him, and it's like, oh, look, Xavier Worthy, another 60-yard touchdown. Cool. And you just it's like, no, don't write off a 60-yard touchxtouchdown. That's not nothing, guys.
No, please don't.
You can't just be like, like another highlight from Xavier. No, stop it. Stop it. Xavier Worthy is very, very good at football. I'm glad that Cover One Draft Weekly, we are planting our flag on one Xavier Worthy as being a very, very good NFL wide receiver. There's other names that we've heard a lot about that have been late risers in the draft class and are getting a lot of buzz. And some of those names we may or may not touch about with our two other spots here with our honorable mentions. I got a feeling that we're not going to talk about one of them. We might do that at the very end of the show. Go, oh, hey, what about that guy? And that we didn't bring up in our top 7. Yeah.
We've got some deep sleepers. Like I've got a deep sleeper that I'm going to bring up at the end here. But one of the guys that I'm really interested in is Rome Odunze's teammate, Jalen Polk, who again, used as this downfield player, but I think he runs better routes than he gets credit for. He's decent after the catch too. Like he's not just this guy that's only going to run and catch balls through contact and things like that. I think he has good speed. We're going to find out at the combine. I'm excited to see him run because I think he can jump pretty high as well. I'm a combine nerd. Like I can't wait to see these guys. Their 3-cone times, their shuttles, and their verticals. Like honestly like their what is the word I'm looking for? But the broad jump. That's what it is. Broad jump. Like how explosive is your lower half? All that stuff. I'm really excited to see that. And then the hands. Exceptional hands. Like he's a really good ball winner too. Like these 2 wide receivers out of Washington are going to find their way to whatever team that drafts them, and they're just not going to drop the football. You can throw them the ball, whether it's in zone or in close contact, and they're going to find a way to come down with it multiple times this year. I mean, he's good double move runner too. He's got multiple double moves this season where he's just like, bye. And the corner's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have opened my hips so early. And that's exactly what happens. Yeah. So he's a fun player. I'm interested to see what he's going to end up doing. But I don't have him as high as I thought I was going to, but he's an honorable mention because I'm trying to get away with the normal team players that we've talked about. And he's definitely someone I'm still pretty high
on. You're trying to get away from guys we've talked about. I'm going to give you one guess here because I've got, the Keon Coleman is one of my honorable mentions because I didn't have him in the top 5. What's the one other name?
I mean, it could be the guy that we love, Ricky Pearsall.
That's not the way that I'm going, but he's right there too. I got to go with my Senior Bowl man crush, go with Malachi Corley. I gotta talk about Corley. I got to talk about Corley. So Corley is a guy that I smile when I watch him play football. He's just very, very good at it. And I'm probably, for anyone out there listening, I'm probably higher on you than Malachi Corley. He is the most physical wide receiver that I have watched film on. He came into the Senior Bowl. Let's see, I should have his verified here. 5'10", Senior Bowl, 5'10", 211, verified size.
Nuts.
I think today's NFL, we've talked about today's NFL wanting certain prototypes of players. One of them is these smaller guys that can run these crazy routes and just has this burning speed and this separation ability and all that stuff because the rules lend themselves to it now. They don't get killed when they go across the middle of the field. Those guys can now play. And the flags are getting thrown on the defenders for trying to be physical with these smaller wide receivers so they can now thrive. Another prototype that every team in the NFL seems to be looking for is your Deebo Samuel, your guy that can do everything. We saw Jaden Reed go into Green Bay this last year as a rookie, and as the season went on, became arguably their best wide receiver. I think it's up there in the conversation, but definitely their most versatile, where they're getting him the ball in a variety of ways. Malachi Corley, Rashee Rice, it's the same thing. You just want these guys that you can get the ball to in a variety of ways and watch them work after the catch. By the way, quick, just tip of the cap to Andy Reid as if he needs any more tips of the cap.
Yeah, right.
But what he did scouting Rashee Rice, whatever that whole front office did, seeing Rashee Rice and saying, this is a guy that we want to have be a yak guy for what he was doing at SMU, which was 180 degrees opposite of that. Hats off. Like, I don't know how you pinpointed that one. Maybe it was just because you didn't have another choice because the wide receiver room is really thin. I don't know, but good on you guys for determining that Rashee Rice is a guy that you just want to get the ball to in space. Malachi Corley is that, though. They're at the Senior Bowl. Listen, we talked about it several times. Yeah. He decided on multiple occasions, there's a defender that I'm lined up with in a one-on-one, and I just want to evaporate him from the face of the earth and just run into his chest and demolish him. And it's like, okay, we're going to show it because you have it in your tool bag, I guess. We all know that it's an offensive pass interference. But this is a guy that is going to give you such a variety of contributions, whether it's in the run game, it's on sweeps, it's on screen passes. Yeah. I think he showed better route running at Senior Bowl week than people were expecting him to, which makes me happy. I think that he showed some pretty decent technical ability, not just this get the ball to him and then he runs one speed sort of player.
Mhm.
I think that he's a guy, though, that can be that Swiss Army knife in an offense. He's going to do the dirty work in the blocking game also, which is a way that guys can contribute and get on the field. This isn't a fantasy show. This is an NFL show. He's going to go out there and he's going to block for your running backs in running plays. He's going to block on passing downs. He's going to do whatever he needs to do if it's schemed up to him. And he's also going to be really good after the catch. He's the Yak King. He's got the crown in his bio on Twitter. He loves what he can do after the catch, and I love what he can do after the catch also. I think he is that Deebo Samuel mold this year with insane athleticism and top-tier physicality. That it's weird to think of a wide receiver being like a closer and a finisher in a game,
Mm-hmm.
but he's that kind of guy where it's like he's going to make defenders tired. Like he's just going to beat down corners or nickels that are trying to line up on him if he goes into the slot or stuff like that. He's just going to punish him all game long and just impose that kind of physicality. So he's very interesting. He's one of a dozen guys that we could say are honorable mentions. There's a lot of wide receivers that we're excited about in this class, but he's one that I'm very intrigued to watch on draft day.
Now, I think we should determine every draft class and give someone the Doug Martin Award, the muscle hamster.
Oh,
like
yes,
and
let's do it.
That's exactly what
I'm
the
in.
vibes are with Malachi Corey. This dude is jacked. He's stocky. He's not, he's not 6 foot, but he rides that line of I'm a running back and a wide receiver, but don't let that fool you. I will run you over. I'll outwork you. He just has that put your head down workman's mentality. I love that about him. I haven't done a ton of film on him. I don't have a lot of it yet, but hopefully over the next month or two, I'll get some more of him. What we saw at the Senior Bowl was like, yeah, that fits pretty much what I was assuming. And the only game that I got to watch was against Ohio State, and I was just like, well, they're doing everything they can to get him the football, and they want to do all those things. So he's like a better version of what people thought Jarrett Stearns coming out of Western Kentucky was going to be.
Sure.
Same kind of usage, you could say, that these slot kind of guys that they utilize in the backfield get the ball to, except I think Stearns was a better downfield player. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. He's a fun guy, and he's going to be a integral part early on as a yak player. Just get in the ball in space and let him work. Just get some blocks out in front of him and let him go to town. So he's a fun player. I'm excited to see more of him when I get the opportunity.
The 2024 Muscle Hamster Award, Malachi Corley, wide receiver, Western Kentucky University, aka the Yak King, aka a power slot. Can we term that a power slot? I guess. Yeah, I like it. I'm here for it. Yeah,
that's what it is. It's not just reserved for the big guys. Okay, it's not just reserved for them. Now, my deep sleeper is somebody you might not even have heard of. I'm sure you have heard of him, but Anthony Gould, wide receiver out of Oregon State. He is 5'8". Okay,
let's go Bees.
5'8". Watch the combine for this guy. Okay, I don't remember if he's at the combine. I think he's going to be at the combine if I'm not mistaken.
I haven't gone through the list yet. I got to take that full invite list and mark up my
yeah, I need to too. But if he's not at the combine, look for his pro day numbers. We're talking about a guy who's going to run 4.3. He will run 4.3. I have information that says he ran a verified 4.3, but also with an 11 plus broad jump, 11 plus at 5'8", and a 36 vert at 5'8". We're talking about a guy who could explode.
Workout warrior. Let's go.
Yes, he could be one of the surprises that finds him early day 3, because he's probably going to get drafted on day 3. There's not a ton of numbers with him, but he runs good routes. He's an electric player, and if you get blocks in front of him, he is a fantastic, I like the term, weaver. He weaves in and out of traffic and just finds space and explodes. So Anthony Gould, wide receiver out of Oregon State, is a name to watch.
That's an interesting one. He has definitely put up some production, a little bit with what he had there. I know they had a very interesting year in Oregon State with the Pac-12 collapsing and all that. It's been really interesting there. But yeah, that's a little wide receiver with a lot of athleticism. It's going to be interesting to see. I also have one that I'll throw out there for you. Jalen Knoll is a wide receiver.
Okay.
in the 2024 NFL draft class out of Iowa State. Let me just let me confirm before I start getting too crazy here and make sure that the guy actually declared. That would be helpful.
Yeah, right. That'd be nice.
It would be helpful if he did. Let's make sure that he did here. You know what? I actually don't think he did. I think he went back. Just kidding. Ignore that one. But there's a lot of wide receivers. There's so many in this draft class. I want to talk about one that we have brought up before already. Actually, I want to list off a couple guys that we didn't actually get to. Names that we love and names that we have discussed that people are higher on that we're not. Roman Wilson, who we were in love with for what he did at the combine. Xavier Legette is a guy that did not crack that top 7. Tez Walker, if you've listened to our show, you know that we're not super crazy high on him. We wish him very well and hope that he proves us wrong. Ricky Pearsall, who we love out of Florida. There are a lot of wide receivers. There's another one out there that's been floating around a lot. Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, the running mate to Xavier Worthy. Have you done any film on him yet?
I have. I like him. I'm not as high on him as I've seen, but like the smoothness that we're talking about with some of these bigger guys, he's incredibly smooth and flashes late hands, all that stuff. I do worry about separation, creativity, creatability. Also, that we're not here to dog on people, but he gives up a lot on routes. He gives up a lot on a lot of things. And I'm not a huge fan of that myself, but you never know what's going to happen. So hopefully he's got an opportunity to blow up the combine. He's going to probably run pretty well. I don't think he's the fastest guy in the world, but he's a really good athlete. So always wish him the best, man.
Yeah, we wish everyone the best. We hope that everyone's going to be successful. But I think with Adonai Mitchell, he's one of these big body wide receivers coming out. He's listed at 6'4", 190. He's such an intriguing guy because it's like you love the raw traits. You love the raw size that he has and the athleticism that he has and stuff like that. But a lot of the technical polish isn't there.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Quentin Johnston last year going to the Chargers, where it's like the ceiling is probably really high on this guy if everything hits and like if everything works out well and if you can kind of teach him up and if you can kind of scheme him correctly. But the floor is probably a little bit low on him too because of a lack of some of the technical ability and, like you said, his ability to inability rather, where he kind of gives up on routes sometimes. So he's an intriguing name that we've seen a lot kind of pop as one of these shiny new toys that I've been talking about, right? You get the prospect fatigue, and it's like, I don't know how you rank him ahead of Xavier Worthy. I'm sorry. I don't get that. And there are people out there that are doing that at this point. Xavier Worthy being a true freshman breakout player that has continued production throughout 3 years. Adonai Mitchell, not that way. Yeah, it's an intriguing wide receiver class. There's a lot of names. There's a lot more names to continue to watch and do film on and continue to study up on and figure out these small school guys that might pop and, who are those guys that are going to show out. There's probably going to be some wide receiver that it's like, oh, I heard his name maybe one time. And at the combine, he runs a 4.37. And it's like, where did you come from? And now I got to go back and watch. It's hard to keep up. There's a lot of names, but we're doing our best, and I think we're doing a great job at it, keeping up on all these wide receivers. I think that's a show, man. I think we covered a lot, got a lot of wide receivers in here, and I'm sure these rankings we're going to have more to say about these top names after the combine. Next week we'll get into maybe another position group as we start heading towards the combine and start putting together some. So much to watch. It's going to be great. I love it. All the film. But one more week of stuff to do. We got 2 weeks until the combine kicks off. So we got a little bit of time left to do our prep work here and get everyone prepared for what to watch during the NFL combine. Good show, man. Good stuff. Thank you for listening out there. It is Cover One Draft Weekly. John Helmkamp, Daniel Harms. We'll catch you guys next time.